Hello, we are ready to start Module 6. And Module 6, as far as modules goes, marks the halfway point. So we're making progress, getting through the material here. The topic for this module is college athletics. And that's a pretty broad title. What we're actually going to focus on when it comes to college athletics is really pretty narrow. So this is going to be kind of unique, a little bit different than what we've done in previous modules. The readings are fairly similar, but each one does give a little bit different angle on the topic. I'm going to talk a little bit about those readings in a few minutes, but yeah, we're gonna just really focus on in this module on the whole idea of exploitation and the ethics related to that, which really is primarily a Division I NCAA athletics issue because of the amount of money that basically men's basketball and football generate and how that gets distributed. So we'll get into that a little bit more. I just wanted to say a few things about the assignments for this week. We are going to do the discussion board again, very similar to what we have done before. We also have an ethical analysis paper this coming module again. That is really the exact same thing as we did a few weeks ago. The main difference, I would say, is in those ethical analysis papers, again, you are free to choose whatever ethical issue you want. It can be something that, we've discussed in class on the discussion board or that we've covered already, or it could be something that we haven't. It could be something that's in the news this week or that was in the news a few years ago. It doesn't really matter to me, but what I really am going to be looking for in that ethical analysis is that you can apply some of the things that we've covered in the class. So I'm really going to be looking for that. So make sure when you write that paper that you try to take the opportunity to specifically cite some of the readings that we've done, some of the theories, and also definitely how you can apply a Christian perspective to the ethical situation also. So as far as the discussion board goes this week, I'm just going to put one question on there. So you can just do your general post like we've done every week, where you just kind of pick out the highlights for you from the reading, answer the one question, and then respond to the current event and respond either to someone's general post or to their question response. So I'll be looking for you to do the 2 posts and then at least 2 responses. And of course, I like to see more than 2. That's the minimum. And some of you do a great job of getting a lot in. And I know that it varies from week to week for how busy you are and all that type of thing too. But again, I want to emphasize the importance of the discussion board. We will have a module or 2 in the future where we probably won't do the discussion board, but most of our modules, that's our main avenue. So I want to make sure that everybody participates on that. So anyway, I'm going to get into the readings here a little bit. Again, our topic being college athletics. I'm going to focus really narrowly on one aspect of ethics related to that, and that is the exploitation of college athletes as it relates to how they're compensated. And as I said earlier, this is really just a D1 thing, and really even more of a major D1 level type of thing, because of the amount of money they generate. Your Power 5 conferences the amount of money there. I linked the readings on the module 6 page, and then I also linked a little breakdown of the finances of, I think they have listed there like 222 of the top colleges as far as the amount of money they or the amount of revenue they generate from athletics. And yeah, there's some interesting things there. I think that you will find these readings pretty interesting. I would say for myself, I'm not really a college sports junkie, but I have to say that the readings really made me think a lot about the way that the NCAA operates. And even though I don't really necessarily agree with all or even a lot of what the different authors talk about, especially in the articles that do have kind of a slant or an opinion. I do think it's really an interesting concept because of the amount of money that the NCAA generates and where that money goes. The athletes who are really responsible for generating the money really get a small percentage of the benefit when you look at the total amount of money that's generated. And you'll see that if that's not something you're already aware of when you dig into these articles and look at that website with the numbers and that type of thing. So anyway, I just want to briefly mention each article. The first article that talks about exploitation of college athletes really kind of is the one that focuses the most on the moral or ethical part of it. That article really talks about the moral dilemma of really where we're at in NCAA athletics, where, what is really the role of a D1 academic institution? Is it to promote the virtues of education, or is it a business? And other questions like, are some athletes exploited for the benefit of others? That's an interesting question. Race is definitely a significant variable because the sports that generate the most revenue have a very high percentage of minority and African American in particular representation in the big money generating sports of football and basketball. So yeah, that article really delves into just the moral and ethical dilemma there. And he uses a lot of kind of philosophical background. He talks a lot about Marx, and so there is kind of a socialist slant there, but he doesn't totally go with that. So I really did find that article interesting. The second article that talks about exploitation and athletics, that one focuses a little bit more on the basics. It doesn't spend as much time talking about the moral issues and philosophy and that type of thing. It just kind of defines what it really means when we say amateur athlete and exploitation. It talks about, it argues really that athletes are definitely exploited because of the fact that they don't really get compensated anywhere near in line with the amount of money that is made. And the conclusion really, and there is an argument also in that article that kind of the counter argument he goes through too, where he looks at the fact that there are definitely some really good benefits that athletes get also. So you can kind of take both sides. But the conclusion of the article is definitely that the NCAA has an ethical responsibility to really look at whether what they're doing is right currently, whether they really are amateur, because when you look at the amount of money generated, there's a lot of people that argue that it's not amateur. And then he talks about the fact that the NCAA really needs to come to some kind of a conclusion about how they're going to handle that. If they do decide that athletes should be compensated, how do you decide what a fair way to do that is? And that's, a huge question, difficult to answer. The other article is more just a history of the NCAA and D1 athletics, and it focuses more on academics. The third article, and its title is about that also, academics and athletics. And it talks about the impact of athletics in academic institutions. And that one is really more just to give you some perspective. It's very interesting, how we went in about a 150-year period from academic institutions not having athletics at all to the current state that we're in, where they generate a huge amount of revenue, and how that has impacted academics. And it's interesting because the article really didn't find a lot of negative impacts on academics. Really, there were a lot of positives. Also talked about things like multiculturalism. There's a little section of the article that kind of goes off on community colleges and the role of athletics there, which is a whole nother pretty interesting aspect. And then it spends quite a bit of time on finances and talking about some of the issues there, which, there really are a lot of, I think, ethical issues related to that as well. So that article, I think, is helpful in that sense. So, I hope you enjoy reading these articles and look forward to seeing what you might have to say on the discussion board.